The rider came through the south gate at noon, trailing dust and certainty, and Cara Rothman recognized the shape of him before she could see his face clearly enough to curse it. She was halfway across the upper paddock with a bucket of whey for the kids when the hoofbeats carried up the hill. The sound made her stop, one hand shading her eyes against the spring sun, and she watched the horseman slow at the lane that split toward the dairy. He sat his gelding like a man who owned the road beneath it, like a man who had owned things before and expected to own them again. Her tusks caught her lower lip. She knew that straight-backed posture, the tilt of his head when he surveyed a place. Knew the dark coat he wore even in warming weather because he thought it made him look serious, made him look like someone worth listening to, Gareth Pemberton. Come back after 2 years as if 2 years were nothing. Cara set the bucket down carefully so she would not throw it. The goats crowded around her legs, bleeding their confusion, but she barely noticed. Her heart was doing something complicated in her chest, something that felt like anger and panic braided together with an edge of old, stupid hurt. She had put Gareth aside. She had made her peace with being left. She had built a life here on the Lindley farm, a good one, milking the dairy goats and turning out cheese that people bought without haggling. She had a place. She had wages and a room in the barn loft that stayed warm all winter. She had proof that she was worth something. She did not need him riding back into her gate. The farmhouse sat at the bottom of the hill, whitewashed and tidy, with the dairy shed and the big barn flanking it. The goat pens spread up the slope where the drainage was good, and the lane came in from the south road through a gate that Nolan Lindley had built himself, sturdy and square. Cara could see the rider reaching that gate now, could see him rein in, and she could see Nolan already there. Nolan must have been walking back from the lower field where they had been spreading manure all morning. He had his hat pushed back and his sleeves rolled, dirt on his forearms, and he moved to stand square in the gateway as the rider approached. He did not step aside, did not call a greeting. Just stood there with his shoulders easy and his hands loose, waiting. Cara started down the hill. Her legs felt strange. She told herself it was just the slope. By the time she got close enough to hear voices, Gareth had dismounted. He stood holding his horse's reins, looking at Nolan with an expression that was half annoyance and half confusion, as if he could not quite figure out why this farmhand was in his way. "I am here for Cara Rothman," Gareth was saying. His voice carried the same measured tone she remembered, the one that suggested he was being reasonable and everyone else had better catch up. "I have business with her, private business." Nolan did not move. He was a tall man, not quite 6 feet but close enough, with brown hair that fell into his eyes when he forgot to cut it and a face that seemed built for grinning. He was not grinning now. His expression was calm and blank and utterly immovable. "She is with me," Nolan said. The words hung in the air like a bell struck once. Clear, final. Cara stopped walking. She was still 10 yards away, half hidden by the corner of the barn. Gareth had not seen her yet. His attention was fixed on Nolan. "With you," Gareth repeated. He looked Nolan up and down, taking in the dirt and the plain shirt and the worn boots. "I see. And who are you exactly?" "Nolan Lindley. I work this farm. A farmhand." Gareth's mouth thinned. "I am sure Cara values your friendship, but I need to speak with her, alone. It is a personal matter." "Then you can speak with both of us," Nolan said. "Seeing as she is with me." Cara's heart was hammering now. She pressed one hand flat against the barn wall, feeling the rough boards under her palm. Nolan's words looped in her head. "She is with me," as if it were true. As if they were not just friends and partners in the dairy work, not just people who liked each other fine and told jokes while they scrubbed the milking stanchions. As if they were something more. They were not something more. She would have known if they were. Nolan was easy and light and quick with a laugh, and he had never once looked at her like she was anything other than exactly what she was, the orc woman who knew her way around goats and did not mind hard work. He had never made her feel small or strange or wrong. And he had never made her feel like he wanted her either. Not like that. But he was saying it now. She is with me. He was standing there lying his face off to Gareth Pemberton, and he was doing it for her. Cara swallowed hard and stepped around the barn. Both men turned. Gareth's face lit up, not quite a smile, but something close, something that looked almost like relief. "Cara," he said, and his voice gentled. "There you are." She made herself walk forward, made herself keep her chin level and her hands steady. "Gareth, you look well." His eyes moved over her, taking in her work dress and her braided hair and the dust on her boots. "The farm suits you." She did not answer that. She stopped beside Nolan, close enough that their shoulders almost brushed. Nolan glanced sideways at her just a flicker, and she saw something complicated in his eyes, something that might have been a question or might have been an apology. "What are you doing here?" she asked Gareth. "I came to see you." He smiled, a careful expression. "I have been thinking about you." "About us. I made a mistake, Cara, leaving the way I did. I want to make it right." The words should have meant something. 2 years ago they would have meant everything. She had cared for Gareth once, back when she was working at the tannery in the next valley, and he was managing his father's supply contracts. He had courted her properly, or what passed for properly when a human man courted an orc woman where people could see. He had brought her ribbons and called her clever. He had kissed her behind the loading sheds and told her she was different from what he expected. Better. And then his father had died and the business had gone to Gareth and he had stopped coming around. No goodbye, no explanation, just gone. She had cried for a month. Then she had stopped crying and started looking for new work, because the tannery paid poorly and she was tired of the smell. She had found the job here, with old man Lindley and his son who needed someone who knew animals and was not afraid of dawn milking. She had learned cheese making from a book Nolan brought her from the market. She had made herself a life that did not have a Gareth-shaped hole in it, and now he was here, smiling at her like nothing had happened. "You left," she said. Her voice came out flat. "You did not say goodbye. You just stopped coming, I know." He had the grace to look uncomfortable. "I was overwhelmed. The business, my father's debts, there was so much to manage. I handled it poorly, but I am in a better position now. I have been thinking we could start again, properly this time." "Start again," Cara repeated. "Yes." Gareth took a step closer. His horse shifted behind him, ears flicking. "Come back with me to the valley. I have a house now, a good one, and the business is stable. You could." "She is staying here," Nolan said. Gareth's jaw tightened. He looked at Nolan with the kind of patience people used on slow children. "I am speaking to Cara. This does not concern you." "It does if you are asking her to leave. She can speak for herself." "She can," Nolan agreed. His voice was still level, but there was an edge under it now, something sharp and bright. "And I am speaking for both of us. She is with me, she is staying, and you should go." Gareth's face darkened. He turned back to Cara, ignoring Nolan entirely. "Is this true, you and him?" Cara opened her mouth, closed it. The lie was right there, easy to tell. She could say yes and Gareth would leave and it would be done. But the lie stuck in her throat, too big and too strange, and she did not know how to make it fit. Nolan must have felt her hesitate. He shifted just slightly, moving a half-inch closer so their shoulders did touch. The weight of him was warm and solid. "It is true," Nolan said quietly, "and you need to respect that." For a long moment Gareth just stared. Then he shook his head, something like pity crossing his face. "I see. Well, I suppose I should not be surprised. You always did have particular standards." The words landed like a slap. Cara felt herself go very still. Particular standards, as if she were the one at fault. As if choosing to be with Nolan, choosing to be with anyone who was not Gareth, were some kind of failure. "I think you should leave now," Nolan said. His voice had gone cold. Gareth swung back into his saddle. He looked down at them both, his expression settling into something smooth and distant. "I will be staying at the Way House for a few days. If you change your mind, Cara, you know where to find me." He turned his horse and rode back down the lane without waiting for an answer. They stood in silence, watching him go, until the dust settled and the sound of hoofbeats faded into the afternoon quiet. Then Cara let out a breath she had not known she was holding. "Thank you," she said. Nolan tilted his head to look at her. Up close she could see the faint lines around his eyes, the freckles across his nose from working in the sun. He looked tired suddenly. Uncertain. "Sorry," he said. "I should have asked first. Before I claimed," he stopped, rubbing the back of his neck. "That was out of line. It was what I needed. Maybe." He was not quite meeting her eyes now. "But it puts you in a strange position. If he tells people, they will think we are together. Really together. And if you want to correct that, it will make things complicated." Cara thought about that. About what it would mean if people believed she and Nolan were a pair. The whispers, probably. The sidelong looks. Some people in the settlement already thought poorly of orcs, and an orc woman taking up with a human man would give them fresh fodder. But others would shrug and say it was none of their business, and a few would even smile, because they liked Nolan and they liked her well enough and they would think it was a fine thing, and Gareth would leave her alone. "Let him tell people," she said. Nolan blinked. "You are sure?" "Yes." "All right." He huffed a breath that might have been a laugh. "All right. Then I guess we are together, at least as far as Gareth Pemberton is concerned." "At least as far as he is concerned," Cara agreed. Nolan's mouth quirked just a little. The beginning of his usual grin. "Could be worse. You could be stuck pretending to be with someone boring." "You think you are not boring?" "I know I am not. I am delightful. Ask anyone." "I am asking you, so that does not count. Ask the goats then. They love me." "The goats love anyone with grain." "Exactly. I am as good as grain." "That is high praise." She felt the tightness in her chest ease just a little. This was familiar ground. This was the Nolan she knew, turning everything into a joke so the world felt lighter. She could work with this. She could pretend for a few days until Gareth gave up and left, and then they could go back to normal. Except when she glanced at Nolan again, he was not quite grinning anymore. He was looking at her with something thoughtful in his eyes, something she could not name. "Come on," he said. "Let us get back to work before the goats stage a revolt." They walked up the hill together, side by side, and Cara tried not to think about how it felt to have him close. Tried not to notice the way he matched his pace to hers, or the way his hand brushed hers once, briefly, before he shoved it into his pocket. It was just pretend. She needed to remember that, even if some part of her, some small foolish part, wished it were not. The rest of the afternoon passed in the usual rhythm of work. They finished the feeding and mucked out the stalls and scrubbed the milking equipment until it shone. Nolan was quieter than usual, but not in a bad way, just thoughtful. He hummed while he worked, some tune Cara did not recognize, and every now and then she caught him glancing at her when he thought she was not looking. She did not ask what he was thinking. She was not sure she wanted to know. Old man Lindley came back from the market just before supper, his cart loaded with supplies. He was a broad, weathered man with a beard gone mostly gray and hands like old leather. He had owned the farm for 40 years and ran it with quiet competence, and he had hired Cara without hesitation when she came looking for work. He treated her fairly, paid her on time, and never once made her feel like she needed to apologize for her skin or her tusks. He was also sharp-eyed and missed very little. "Heard there was a rider asking after you," he said to Cara as they unloaded sacks of flour and oats. "Fellow from the valley." "Yes," Cara said. She kept her voice even. "An old acquaintance." "Acquaintance," Lindley grunted. "That is a word for it." Nolan said he sent him packing. Nolan was very helpful. Lindley slid a look toward his son, who was carrying a crate of lamp oil toward the house. "I am sure he was." Cara did not miss the tone. She set down the sack she was holding and met the old man's eyes. "Is there something you want to say? Just that if this fellow is going to be a problem, I want to know about it. I do not like trouble on my property." "He is not a problem." "Good." Lindley hefted another sack onto his shoulder. "Because you are a good worker, Cara, and I would hate to lose you over some fool with bad timing." The knot in Cara's chest loosened a little more. "Thank you. Do not thank me for treating you decent. That is just basic sense." He started toward the house, then paused. "And for what it is worth, I think Nolan has good taste." He was gone before Cara could figure out how to answer that. Supper was stew and bread, eaten at the big kitchen table with the windows open to the evening breeze. Lindley told stories about the market, about the blacksmith's new apprentice who had managed to shoe a horse backward, and the herb seller who swore her tonics could cure anything short of death. Nolan laughed in all the right places and asked questions and made jokes, and to anyone watching it would have looked like a normal meal. An easy evening. But under the table, Nolan's knee bumped Cara's once, and when she glanced at him, he was already looking away. After supper, she retreated to her room in the barn loft. It was a small space, but it was hers. A bed, a trunk for her things, a window that looked out over the fields. She lit the lamp and sat on the edge of the bed, trying to untangle the mess of the day. Gareth was back. Nolan had lied for her. They were pretending to be together. And some part of her, the part she had been ignoring for months now, was whispering that maybe it did not have to be pretend. Maybe Nolan's easy smiles and his shoulder brushing hers, and the way he always saved her the crispest piece of bacon at breakfast, meant something more than she had let herself believe. But that was dangerous territory. She had been wrong before. She had thought Gareth cared, and he had left. She was not going to make that mistake again. A knock on the door pulled her out of her thoughts. She stood, smoothing her skirt, and opened it to find Nolan on the landing. "Hey," he said. He had his hands in his pockets, his expression carefully casual. "Can I come in?" She stepped back and he slipped inside. The room felt suddenly smaller with both of them in it. "I wanted to check on you," Nolan said. He leaned against the wall, his gaze steady. "Today was a lot. I am fine." "Are you?" Cara hesitated. Then, because it was Nolan and he had stood in the gate for her, she said, "I do not know." "That is fair." He was quiet for a moment. "Then can I ask you something?" "Yes." "You still have feelings for him?" "For Gareth?" The question landed like a stone in still water. Cara turned it over, testing the weight of it. Did she still have feelings for Gareth? She had loved him once, or thought she had, but that felt like a long time ago. The man who had ridden up to the gate today was a stranger wearing a familiar face. She did not know him anymore. Was not sure she wanted to. "No," she said finally. "I do not think I do." Nolan's shoulders relaxed just slightly. "Good, because he does not deserve you. You do not even know what happened between us." "I know he left you. I know he came back acting like you should be grateful." "That is enough." Cara looked at him, really looked, and saw the anger buried under his calm, saw the way his jaw was tight, the way his hands had curled into fists in his pockets. He was furious on her behalf, furious in a way that was quiet and controlled and utterly genuine. "Why did you do it?" she asked. "Why did you tell him I was with you?" Nolan met her eyes. "Because he looked at you like you were something he could just pick back up, like you had been sitting here waiting for him, And you deserve better than that. So you lied. So I lied, he agreed. He smiled, but it did not quite reach his eyes. I am good at that, lying, making things sound better than they are. It is a useful skill. I do not think you lie as much as you think you do. No, he tilted his head, curious. What do you think I do then? I think you use jokes to hide things, to keep people from getting too close. Nolan went very still. For a moment he just stared at her, something raw and surprised flickering across his face. Then he laughed, a short, startled sound. You are the first person to say that out loud. Am I wrong? No. He pushed off the wall, taking a step closer. You are not wrong. They were standing too close now, close enough that she could see the faint stubble on his jaw, the way his eyes were more gray than blue in the lamplight. Close enough that she could smell the soap he used and the fresh air clinging to his shirt. Nolan, she started, but she did not know how to finish. I meant it, he said quietly. When I said you were with me, I know it was a lie, but I meant it. I want it to be true. Cara's breath caught. You do? Yes. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she did not, he brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers warm against her temple. I have wanted that for a while now. I just did not think you would want someone like me. Someone like you. Someone who jokes too much. Someone who is not serious or steady or any of the things you probably need. She almost laughed. Almost. Nolan, you are the steadiest person I know. He looked stunned. I am. Yes, you show up every day, you work hard. You make me laugh when I am tired, and you stand in gates for me when old suitors come back. That is steady. Cara, but I need to know this is real, she said, the words coming fast now. I need to know you are not just saying this because Gareth showed up and made things complicated. I need to know you mean it. Nolan took her hands, folding them carefully in his. His palms were calloused and warm and sure. I mean it, he said. I have meant it for months, I just did not have the guts to say it until today. Something in her chest cracked open, spilling warmth through her whole body. She looked down at their joined hands, at the way his fingers threaded through hers like they belonged there. Okay, she said softly. Okay, let us try this. Really try, not pretend. The grin that broke across Nolan's face was bright enough to light the whole loft. He squeezed her hands, then lifted one to press a kiss to her knuckles, quick and almost shy. We can do that. We still have to pretend for Gareth. Right, pretend for him. Real for us. He was still smiling, ridiculous and happy and utterly sincere. I can work with that. Cara found herself smiling back. You are strange, Nolan Lindley. And you are wonderful, Cara Rothman. He left before she could think of an answer to that, slipping out with a last grin and a soft good night. Cara stood alone in her room, holding the hand he had kissed, and let herself feel the full weight of what had just happened. She was with Nolan. Really with him. And he was with her. It should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt like coming home. The next 3 days passed in a strange, dreamlike haze. Gareth did not come back to the farm, but his presence hung over the settlement like a storm cloud, just out of sight. Cara heard from the baker that he was asking questions about her, about how long she had been at the Lindley farm, about whether she was happy there, about the human boy she was supposedly involved with. The baker, bless her, had told Gareth it was none of his business and charged him double for his bread. Cara and Nolan fell into their new reality slowly, carefully. They did not announce anything. They just let people see them together walking back from the fields with their hands brushed close, sitting next to each other at the table, smiling at each other in ways that probably gave everything away. Old man Lindley noticed, of course. He did not say much, just grunted his approval one morning and told Nolan to stop mooning and finish the milking. The work did not change. They still rose before dawn and milked the goats and turned out cheese and scrubbed equipment until their hands were raw. But there were new moments threaded through it now. Nolan stealing a kiss behind the dairy shed when he thought no one was looking. Cara leaning into him while they sat on the fence watching the sunset. His hand finding hers in the dark loft, their fingers tangling together while they talked about everything and nothing. It felt fragile, precious, like something that might break if they held it too tightly. And then, on the fourth day, Gareth came back. This time he did not come alone. Cara was in the dairy shed, checking the aging cheeses when she heard the horses. 3 of them, maybe 4. She stepped outside and saw Gareth dismounting at the gate, along with 2 men she did not recognize. One was tall and thin, dressed in clerk's clothing with a leather satchel slung over his shoulder. The other was broad and hard-faced, with the look of someone hired to stand behind important people and look intimidating. Nolan was already at the gate. He must have been mending the fence along the lane because he had his hammer in one hand and a pouch of nails on his belt. He set the hammer down carefully, but he did not step aside. Cara walked down to join him. Her stomach was a tight knot. "Gareth," she said evenly, "what is this?" Gareth smiled. It was not a warm expression. "Just a conversation, Cara, a civil conversation among reasonable people." "Who are they?" Nolan asked, nodding toward the 2 men. "This is Mr. Hewitt," Gareth said, gesturing to the clerk. "He handles legal contracts and property matters. And this is Mr. Stone. He is here to ensure our conversation remains civil." "Civil," Nolan repeated. His voice was flat. "You brought muscle to ensure civility." "I brought a witness," Gareth corrected, "because I want there to be no confusion about what is discussed here." Old man Lindley came out of the house, alerted by the voices. He took in the scene with a single sweeping glance, then walked down to stand beside Nolan and Cara. He did not say anything, just crossed his arms and waited. "All right," Cara said. "Say what you came to say." Gareth gestured to Mr. Hewitt, who opened his satchel and pulled out a sheaf of papers. "I have been reviewing the trade contracts for this region," Gareth said. "Specifically the agreements governing cheese and dairy sales. It has come to my attention that the Lindley farm has been selling product directly to merchants in the valley. That is a breach of the regional supply agreements my company holds." Old man Lindley's expression went cold. "That is horseshit. We sell to whoever buys. Same as every farm in the settlement. Not when the buyers are under exclusive contract to Pemberton Supplies," Gareth said smoothly. "Mr. Hewitt has the documentation. 3 of your largest buyers have been in violation for the past 6 months. And as the primary contract holder, I am within my rights to claim damages." "Damages," Nolan said. He sounded incredulous. "You are threatening us over cheese sales." "I am enforcing legal agreements." Gareth's gaze slid to Cara. "Of course, I am a reasonable man. I am willing to overlook these violations in exchange for certain considerations." "Let me guess," Cara said. Her voice was shaking now, but she kept it steady. "You want me to come back with you?" "I want you to honor the understanding we had," Gareth said. "Before you were distracted by," he gestured vaguely at Nolan, "by this." The insult hung in the air. Nolan took a step forward, but Cara caught his arm. "There was no understanding," she said. "You left, I moved on. That is the end of it." "Is it?" Gareth's smile sharpened. "Because it seems to me that you have built quite a profitable little operation here. The dairy contracts you established, the buyers you cultivated, those are valuable. And if this farm loses access to those buyers, it will be quite a blow. For everyone." Cara felt the blood drain from her face. The dairy contracts. She had built those. She had gone to the merchants herself, shown them samples of the cheese she made, negotiated terms and prices. It was her work that had made the dairy profitable, and Gareth was threatening to take it all away. "You cannot do this," she said. "I can," Gareth said, "and I will, unless you agree to return with me and fulfill the commitment you made." "I made no commitment. You accepted my courtship. You accepted my gifts. In the eyes of the law, that constitutes an agreement of intent." Mr. Hewitt cleared his throat. "Actually, Mr. Pemberton, the legal standing of courtship agreements is somewhat—" "Thank you, Mr. Hewitt," Gareth said sharply. The clerk fell silent. Old man Lindley stepped forward. His face was like granite. "Get off my land." "I am not on your land. I am on the public lane." "Then stay on the public lane and stop threatening my family." "Family," Gareth repeated. He looked at Cara. "Is that what you think this is? They are not your family, Cara. They are using you. They want the contracts you built and the buyers you brought in. That is all." "That is not true," Nolan said. His voice was low and tight with fury. "Is it not? Tell me, did you even know her before she brought those contracts in? Or did you suddenly become interested once the dairy started turning a profit?" Nolan's jaw worked. Cara could see him fighting to stay calm, to not rise to the bait. She squeezed his arm, a silent plea. "Do not give him what he wants." "We are done here," Old Man Lindley said. "You have said your piece. Now go." "I will go," Gareth said, "but I will be back in 1 week with the magistrate. And if this farm is still in violation of the supply contracts, I will enforce my rights, fully." He swung back into his saddle. "Think carefully, Cara. 1 week." He rode off with his men trailing behind him. The dust settled slowly in the lane. For a long moment no one spoke. Then Old Man Lindley cursed, low and vicious, and turned back toward the house. "Is he right?" Nolan asked quietly. "About the contracts?" "I do not know," Cara said. Her hands were shaking. She clenched them into fists to hide it. "I do not know how the supply agreements work. I just sold to people who wanted to buy." "We will figure it out," Nolan said. He sounded steadier than she felt. "We will find the contracts and read them. There has to be a way around this. And if there is not, then we will find another way." He took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "We are not giving you up, Cara. Not to him. Not to anyone." She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that they could fight this and win. But Gareth had money and lawyers and contracts written in language she did not understand. And she was just an orc woman who knew how to make cheese. It did not feel like even odds. That night they spread the contracts out on the kitchen table. There were dozens of them, yellowed with age, written in cramped handwriting that was hard to read. Old Man Lindley fetched his spectacles and a bottle of whiskey, and the three of them bent over the papers, trying to make sense of the legal language. It took hours. The whiskey disappeared. The lamp burned low. And slowly, painfully, the picture came into focus. Gareth was not entirely wrong. There were regional supply agreements, signed years ago when his father had helped fund the settlement's expansion. The agreements gave Pemberton Supplies first refusal on certain goods: grain, wool, preserved meats. But the clause about dairy was vague. It mentioned milk and butter but said nothing specific about cheese. "It is a gray area," Nolan said, rubbing his eyes. "That is what this is. He is claiming cheese falls under dairy, but the contract does not actually say that." "So we might be able to fight it," Cara said. "Maybe. If we can afford a lawyer and if the magistrate agrees with our reading." Old Man Lindley leaned back in his chair. "And that is a lot of ifs." "What if I just go with him?" Cara said. The words felt like stones in her mouth. Both men turned to stare at her. "No," Nolan said. "Listen, no." His voice was firm. "You are not sacrificing yourself for this. We will find another way." "What other way?" Cara's frustration spilled over. "He has lawyers and contracts and money. We have goats and hope. That is not a fight we can win. We can try. And if we lose, you lose the farm." Then we lose the farm, old man Lindley said. His voice was calm. I have lost things before. I will lose things again, but I am not handing you over to that bastard just to save some dairy contracts. Cara's throat tightened. This is my fault. I brought the contracts here. I made this a target. You made this place profitable, Nolan said. You built something good. That is not a fault. That is a gift. A gift that is going to cost you everything. Then it costs us. He reached across the table and took her hand. But we are not losing you. She looked at their joined hands, then up at Nolan's face. He looked exhausted and worried and absolutely certain, and she realized with a jolt that he meant it. He would lose the farm before he let her go. He would give up everything he had built here, everything his father had built, rather than send her back to Gareth. It was the steadiness she had told him about. The steadiness that did not waver, even when everything was on the line. All right, she said softly. All right, we fight. The week that followed was a blur of frantic activity. They made copies of the contracts and sent them to a lawyer in the next valley, a woman who specialized in trade disputes. They talked to the merchants who bought their cheese, trying to understand the terms of their agreements with Pemberton Supplies. They worked longer hours in the dairy, preparing extra stock in case they needed to find new buyers quickly, and they waited for the magistrate. Nolan stayed close. He did not say much, but he was always there working beside her, bringing her water when she forgot to drink, sitting with her in the evenings when the worry got too heavy to carry alone. He had stopped joking so much. The lightness had drained out of him, replaced by something fierce and protective. Cara found herself leaning on him more than she meant to. Found herself watching him when he was not looking, memorizing the line of his shoulders and the way his hair fell into his eyes. If this all fell apart, if she had to leave, she wanted to remember him exactly as he was. Steady. Real. Hers. On the 6th day, the lawyer sent word. The contract was vague enough that they had a case, but it would take time to argue. Months, maybe, and in the meantime, Gareth could still cause trouble. So we stall, Nolan said. We give her time to build the case. And how do we stall? Cara asked. I have an idea, old man Lindley said. He was grinning, the first real smile Cara had seen from him all week. A stupid idea, maybe, but it might work, he explained. It was a stupid idea, it was also brilliant. The next morning, when Gareth arrived with the magistrate and Mr. Hewitt and his hired muscle, he found the entire settlement waiting for him, not just the Lindleys. Everyone. The baker and the blacksmith and the herb seller. The other farmers and the traders and the families who lived along the lane. They lined the road, standing quiet and watchful, and when Gareth rode up they did not move. Old man Lindley stepped forward. Beside him stood Cara and Nolan, and behind them the whole weight of the settlement. You are not welcome here, Lindley said. Gareth's smile was thin. I am here on legal business. You cannot stop me. We can, the blacksmith said. He was a huge man, all muscle and beard, and he crossed his arms in a way that suggested he would very much enjoy the opportunity to demonstrate. You are threatening one of ours. That makes it our business. One of yours, Gareth repeated. He looked at Cara. She is an orc. You would go to all this trouble for an orc. We would go to this trouble for anyone who belongs here, the baker said. Her voice was sharp. And Cara belongs. The magistrate, a tired-looking man with ink-stained fingers, cleared his throat. If I may interject, you may not, Lindley said. This is not a legal matter. This is a matter of harassment. Mr. Pemberton came to my farm and threatened my livelihood because he wants to force Cara Rothman into a relationship she does not want. That is not contract law. That is coercion. The magistrate blinked. He looked at Gareth. Is that true? It is a mischaracterization. It is the truth, Nolan said. His voice rang out clear and strong. He told us he would enforce the contracts only if Cara agreed to go with him. That is coercion, and we have witnesses. Half the crowd nodded. The magistrate sighed. He pulled out a notebook and flipped through it. Mr. Pemberton, do you have documentation of an actual contract violation? The dairy sales, do you have documentation? The magistrate repeated. Gareth's jaw tightened. Mr. Hewitt has the files. The clerk fumbled with his satchel, pulling out papers. The magistrate took them and scanned through them, his frown deepening. Finally, he looked up. These agreements mention milk and butter. They do not specify cheese. Cheese is a dairy product, which would need to be specified in the contract if you wanted exclusive rights. The magistrate handed the papers back. I am not saying you do not have a case, Mr. Pemberton, but it is not clear-cut. You would need to file a formal dispute and let it go through the proper channels, which will take time. I am prepared to file. Fine. You can do that back in the valley, not here. The magistrate tucked his notebook away. And in the future, if you have a legal dispute, you handle it through legal channels. You do not bring hired men to someone's farm and threaten their livelihood. Gareth's face had gone stiff. I was within my rights. You were pushing boundaries, the magistrate said flatly. And now you have been warned. If I hear about you harassing Miss Rothman or the Lindleys again, I will consider it a violation of the peace. Do you understand? For a long moment Gareth just stared. Then he inclined his head, stiff and cold. I understand. Good. The magistrate turned to Old Man Lindley. If he files a dispute, you will receive notice. In the meantime, carry on as you have been. We will, Lindley said. Gareth wheeled his horse around. He did not look at Cara, did not say anything else. Just rode off with his men trailing behind, and this time the dust that rose in their wake felt like a closing door. The crowd stayed until Gareth was out of sight. Then, slowly, they began to disperse. The blacksmith clapped Nolan on the shoulder. The baker pressed a loaf of fresh bread into Cara's hands. One by one they drifted back to their homes and shops, leaving the Lindleys standing in the lane. Cara realized she was shaking, not from fear, from relief so overwhelming it felt like she might fall over. Is it done? She asked. Not quite, Old Man Lindley said. He can still file the dispute, but he will not win, and even if he tries, the settlement will back us. He looked at her, his expression serious. You are one of ours, Cara. We do not let people bully our own. Cara's eyes stung. She blinked hard, trying to keep the tears from falling. Thank you. Do not thank me. Just keep making good cheese. He walked back toward the house, leaving Nolan and Cara alone in the lane. We did it, Nolan said. He sounded dazed. We actually did it. You did it, Cara said. You and your father, I just stood here. You stayed, Nolan said. You did not give in to him, that matters. Cara looked at him, at the exhaustion written into every line of his face and the fierce, stubborn pride in his eyes. He had fought for her. He had stood in the gate and lied for her and gathered the whole settlement to back her, and he had never once asked for anything in return. Nolan, she said. Yeah, I love you. The words hung in the air, bright and terrifying. Nolan went very still. Then slowly a smile spread across his face. Not his usual grin, easy and careless. This one was different, softer. Real. I love you too, he said. Cara closed the distance between them and kissed him. It was not careful or tentative. It was sure. A promise sealed in touch and breath and the warmth of his hands framing her face. When they broke apart, Nolan was laughing, breathless and joyful. Does this mean we are officially together? Not pretend. Not pretend, Cara agreed. Good. He kissed her again, quick and grinning. Because I was getting tired of lying. They walked back to the farm hand in hand, and for the first time in a week, Cara felt like she could breathe. The rest of the spring passed in a haze of work and slow, steady happiness. Gareth did not file his dispute. Word filtered back through the merchants that he had decided to focus on other markets, that the settlement dairy contracts were not worth the trouble. Cara did not know if that was true or if the magistrate's warning had been enough to scare him off. She did not particularly care. What mattered was that he was gone, and she was here. She and Nolan fell into their relationship the way they had fallen into the dairy work, easily, naturally, like it was something they had been doing all along. They worked side by side during the day and sat together in the evenings, talking or not talking, just being close. They went to market together and brought back supplies and gossip. They tested new cheese recipes and argued good-naturedly about whether ash rolled rounds sold better than herb-crusted ones. Old man Lindley watched them with a satisfaction that bordered on smug. He did not say much, but every now and then Cara caught him smiling when he thought they were not looking. Summer came, warm and golden. The goats grazed on the hillside and the cheese aged in the cool dairy shed, and the days stretched long and easy. Nolan taught Cara to fish in the stream at the edge of the property, though she was terrible at it and ended up laughing so hard she scared away all the fish. She taught him a song from her childhood, a lilting tune in the Orcish tongue, and he hummed it while he worked until he could sing it back to her note perfect. And then, in late summer, the notice came about the cheese fair. It was held every year in the valley, a gathering of dairy farms and cheesemakers to showcase their products and compete for ribbons. Old man Lindley had entered once, years ago, and come away empty-handed. He had not bothered since. "We should go," Nolan said. He was reading the notice aloud over breakfast, his eyes bright with excitement. "We should enter." "Why?" Cara asked. "We already sell everything we make. Because it would be fun. Because we are good at this and we should show off a little. Because," he grinned at her, "because I want to watch you win. You do not know that I would win. I know our cheese is the best in the region. That has to count for something." Old man Lindley snorted. "Winning a ribbon would not hurt business, might even bring in new buyers. See?" Nolan leaned back in his chair, looking pleased with himself. "It is a smart business decision." "It is showing off," Cara said, but she was smiling. Can it not be both? In the end, they entered. They spent the next 2 weeks preparing their best cheeses, selecting wheels that had aged to perfection, and wrapping them carefully for transport. Nolan built a crate to carry everything, padded with straw to keep the rounds from jostling. Cara wrote out labels in her careful script, listing the type and age of each cheese. It felt important, this. Not just the competition, but the fact that they were doing it together. That they were building something they could be proud of. The fair was held in a wide meadow outside the valley's main town. Dozens of tents had been set up, each one displaying cheeses and dairy goods from farms all across the region. The air smelled of grass and milk and the faint tang of aging cheese. People wandered from tent to tent, sampling and chatting and haggling over prices. Nolan and Cara set up their display with care. They arranged the cheese wheels on a board, smallest to largest, and set out samples on a clean cloth. The morning sun warmed the tent, and Cara felt a flutter of nerves in her stomach. "Relax," Nolan said, bumping her shoulder with his. "This is going to be great. You do not know that, I do. Trust me." The judges came through in the early afternoon. They were a panel of 3: a merchant from the capital, a renowned cheesemaker from the southern provinces, and a chef who ran a tavern famous for its food. They moved methodically from tent to tent, tasting samples and taking notes. When they reached the Lindley display, Cara felt her heart hammering. She forced herself to stand tall, to meet their eyes without flinching. One of the judges was human, one was a dwarf, and one was an elf. The elf's gaze lingered on her tusks for a moment before flicking to the cheese. They tasted in silence. Cara watched their faces, trying to read their reactions. The merchant's expression was neutral. The chef nodded slightly. The cheesemaker took a second bite, then a third. "Interesting," the cheesemaker said finally. "What is the aging period?" 6 months for the ash rolled rounds, Cara said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. 3 months for the herb crusted. The plain rounds are aged 8 months. And the milk, goat, from our own herd. The cheesemaker made a note. The texture is excellent, firm but not dry. And the flavor has good depth. "Thank you," Cara said. The judges moved on. Nolan let out a breath and grabbed Cara's hand. "That went well. You think so?" They took notes. "That is a good sign." They spent the rest of the afternoon watching the crowds and handing out samples. People lingered at their tent, tasting and asking questions. A few made offers to buy, and Nolan took their information, promising to arrange deliveries. By the time the sun started to dip toward the horizon, Cara's nerves had settled into a cautious optimism. Maybe they did have a chance. The winners were announced at sunset, when the whole fair gathered in the center of the meadow. The judges stood on a makeshift platform, the ribbons laid out on a table beside them. Third place went to a farm from the northern hills. Second place went to a well-established dairy that had been winning ribbons for years. And the first place ribbon for excellence in aged cheese, the merchant announced, goes to Lindley Farm. For a moment Cara did not move, did not breathe. Then Nolan let out a whoop and grabbed her, lifting her off her feet in a spinning hug. She laughed, dizzy and disbelieving, and when he set her down she was grinning so hard her cheeks hurt. They walked up to the platform together. The cheesemaker handed Cara the ribbon, a length of blue silk with gold lettering. "Well done," she said. "That cheese was exceptional." "Thank you," Cara managed. They walked back through the crowd and people called out congratulations. The baker from their settlement was there, cheering loud enough to be heard across the meadow. The blacksmith gave them a thumbs up. Even people Cara did not know stopped to shake their hands and ask where they sold their cheese. By the time they made it back to their tent, Cara felt like she was floating. "We won," she said. She looked down at the ribbon in her hands, the silk smooth and cool against her palms. "We actually won." "Told you," Nolan said. He was grinning like an idiot, his eyes bright. "I told you we would." "You did." He pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her, and pressed a kiss to her temple. "I am so proud of you. It was both of us." "It was you," he said. "You made this happen. You built the dairy, you learned the recipes, you made the cheese. This is your win, Cara." She leaned into him, letting herself feel the full weight of the moment. The ribbon in her hands, the warmth of Nolan's arms, the knowledge that she had done this, that she was good at something, that she belonged. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For believing in me." Nolan pulled back just enough to look at her. His expression was serious now, open and unguarded. "Always," he said. "I will always believe in you." She kissed him then, slow and sure, and the fair carried on around them, noise and light and celebration. But in that moment, it was just the two of them. Just Nolan and Cara and the future they were building together. They packed up the tent as the stars came out. The ride home was quiet, both of them too tired and too happy to talk much. The blue ribbon lay carefully wrapped in Cara's pack, and every now and then she reached back to touch it, just to make sure it was real. When they reached the farm, Old Man Lindley was waiting on the porch. He took one look at their faces and started laughing. "You won," he said. "We won," Nolan confirmed. "Damn." Lindley shook his head, grinning. "I should have placed a bet, would have cleaned up." They celebrated with cider and leftover pie, sitting around the kitchen table and recounting the day. Lindley insisted on hanging the ribbon in the dairy shed, right where everyone who came in could see it. "Let people know who they are dealing with," he said. Later, when the house was dark and quiet, Cara and Nolan sat together on the porch steps. The night was cool and clear, the stars scattered thick across the sky. Nolan's arm was around her shoulders and she leaned into him, warm and content. "Today was a good day," Nolan said. "It was. I have been thinking," he said, "about the future, about us." Cara tilted her head to look at him. "What about us?" He was quiet for a moment, his gaze on the stars. Then he said, "I want to marry you." The words settled over her, soft and sure. Cara felt her breath catch. "Are you asking?" she said. "Not yet." He smiled, a little sheepish. "I want to do it properly, with a ring and a plan and all the things you deserve. But I wanted you to know that I am thinking about it, that I want that future with you." Cara's throat tightened. She reached up and touched his face, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "I want that too." "Yeah. Yeah." Nolan turned his head to kiss her palm. "Good. That is really good." They sat in silence for a while, wrapped in each other and the quiet night, and Cara thought about the future, about a life here on this farm with this man, building something that was theirs. It was not the life she had imagined when she was younger, when she thought her future lay with someone like Gareth. But it was better. It was real. "We should probably go inside," Nolan said eventually, "before my father comes out and tells us we are being ridiculous. We are being ridiculous." "Little bit." He stood and offered her his hand. "But I like it." She took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. They went inside together and Cara felt the rightness of it settle into her bones. This was where she belonged. This was home. The weeks turned into months. Autumn came, painting the hills in shades of gold and red. The goats grew their winter coats, and the dairy production slowed as the weather cooled. Cara and Nolan worked through the changing season, preparing the farm for winter, stacking wood and mending fences and making sure the animals had shelter. And one evening, as the first snow began to fall, Nolan asked her to walk with him. They went up the hill, past the goat pens and the upper pasture, to a spot that overlooked the whole farm. The fields spread out below them, white with fresh snow, and the farmhouse glowed warm in the twilight. Nolan stopped and turned to face her. His hands were shaking. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring, simple silver, with a small green stone set in the band. "I know I said I would do this properly," he said. His voice was unsteady, nervous in a way she had never heard before. "But I do not think there is a proper way. I just know that I love you. That I want to spend the rest of my life with you. That I want to build a future together, here on this farm or wherever we end up." So, he took a breath. "Cara Rothman, will you marry me?" Cara looked at him, at the ring in his hand and the hope in his eyes and the snow falling soft around them. And she thought about everything that had led to this moment. Gareth riding up to the gate and Nolan standing in his way, saying, "She is with me." The fight to keep the farm and the settlement that had rallied behind them. The cheese fair and the ribbon and all the small, quiet days in between. She thought about the future they were building, and she knew her answer. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." Nolan's face broke into the widest grin she had ever seen. He slipped the ring onto her finger, his hand still shaking, and then he kissed her. It was a kiss full of joy and relief and promise, and when they broke apart they were both laughing. "We are getting married," Nolan said, breathless. "We are. My father is going to be insufferable about this. He has been waiting for me to ask for months. He knew. Of course he knew. He helped me pick the ring." Nolan took her hand, looking down at the ring on her finger. "Do you like it? I wanted something that reminded me of you. The stone is green, like my skin," Cara finished softly. "Like your eyes," Nolan corrected. "They have flecks of green when the light hits them right. I wanted you to have something that felt like you." Cara's eyes stung. She blinked hard, smiling through the tears. "It is perfect." They walked back down the hill hand in hand, the snow falling heavier now, blanketing the world in quiet white. When they reached the house, Old Man Lindley took one look at them and broke into a grin. "About time," he said. They were married in the spring, when the fields were green and the goats had their kids and the world felt new. The ceremony was simple, held in the meadow near the farm with the whole settlement in attendance. The baker made a cake. The blacksmith forged them matching iron bands to wear alongside their rings. The herb seller wove Cara a crown of wildflowers, and she wore her best dress, the one she had sewn herself from soft blue fabric Nolan had brought her from the market. Nolan wore his good shirt and a vest his father had given him, and when Cara walked down the aisle between the rows of chairs, his face lit up like the sun. The magistrate officiated, reading the traditional vows. But when it came time for them to speak, Nolan set aside the script. "I am not good at being serious," he said, his hands wrapped around Cara's. "But I am going to try. Cara, you are the steadiest thing in my life. You are strong and smart and kind, and you make me want to be better. You make me want to be the man you see when you look at me. I promise to stand with you, to work beside you, to make you laugh when things are hard and to hold you when they are harder. I promise to be yours, fully and completely, for as long as we both live." Cara's throat was tight. She squeezed his hands and took a breath. "Nolan, you told me once that you used jokes to keep people from getting too close. But you let me close. You let me see the person you are underneath all the humor and the charm. And that person is good. That person is steady and brave and loyal, and I love him with everything I have. I promise to be your partner, to build a life with you, to choose you every day for as long as we both live." The magistrate pronounced them married. Nolan kissed her, and the crowd cheered, and Cara felt like her heart might burst from the fullness of it. They danced in the meadow as the sun set, and people brought food and drinks and toasted their happiness. Old Man Lindley gave a speech that made everyone laugh and made Nolan groan with embarrassment. The blacksmith challenged Nolan to an arm wrestling match and lost spectacularly. The baker cornered Cara and told her she had always known they would end up together, that anyone with eyes could see how Nolan looked at her. And late in the evening, when the party had wound down and most people had gone home, Cara and Nolan slipped away. They walked up the hill to the spot where he had proposed, and they stood together looking out over the farm. "This is ours now," Nolan said. "Really ours." "It was always ours," Cara said. "We just made it official." He laughed and pulled her close. "I love you, Cara Lindley." "I love you too," she said. And the name settled over her, warm and right. Cara Lindley, not Rothman anymore, Lindley. Part of this family, this place, this life, they had built something together, something good and strong and true, and whatever came next, they would face it side by side. The years that followed were full and good. The dairy thrived, their cheeses winning ribbons at fairs across the region. They expanded the herd and built a new shed for aging, and Cara developed a reputation as one of the finest cheesemakers in the valley. Buyers came from as far as the capital to purchase their products, and the farm prospered. Old Man Lindley grew older, his hair going white and his hands gnarled with age, but he worked alongside them until the day he could not anymore. When he finally retired, it was with satisfaction, knowing the farm was in good hands. Cara and Nolan took over fully, running the farm together with the same partnership that had always defined them. They argued sometimes about small things like whether to invest in more goats or whether the new fence should go along the east pasture or the west. But they always worked it out, always found the middle ground, because they knew how to listen to each other. how to bend without breaking. And when Cara realized she was pregnant, late one summer when the fields were golden and the air was thick with heat, Nolan cried. Actual tears running down his face while he held her and laughed and said he could not believe it. They were going to be parents. They were going to have a family. Their son was born in the spring, a squalling, healthy baby with Nolan's brown hair and Cara's green-tinted skin. They named him Felix, and he was the loudest, most demanding creature Cara had ever met. And she loved him more than she thought possible. Nolan was a natural father. He sang to Felix, the same orcish song Cara had taught him, and he walked the baby around the farm, pointing out the goats and the chickens and the fields, narrating everything in a gentle, sing-song voice. Cara would watch them from the porch, her heart full to bursting, and think about how far she had come. From the girl who had been left by Gareth to the woman who had built this life. This family. Felix grew strong and curious, toddling after his parents, trying to help with the chores. And 2 years later, Cara gave birth to another son, Thomas, who was quieter than his brother but just as determined. The boys were inseparable, tumbling through the fields and getting into trouble and filling the farmhouse with noise and laughter. Old man Lindley held his grandsons and told them stories about the farm, about the land and the work and the importance of treating people fairly. He passed away peacefully one winter night in his sleep with his family around him. They buried him on the hill overlooking the farm, and Cara planted wildflowers on his grave. Every spring they bloomed, a riot of color against the green grass. The farm became the boys' inheritance, the legacy of hard work and love that Cara and Nolan had built. And as the years passed, Cara would sometimes think back to that day when Gareth had ridden up to the gate, to the moment when Nolan had stood in his way and said, "She is with me." It had been a lie then, a bluff, but it had become the truest thing in her life. She was with Nolan. She had always been with Nolan, from the moment he decided she was worth fighting for, and he was with her. They were together, building a life that was rich and full and exactly what they both needed. One evening, when the boys were older and the farm was quiet, Cara and Nolan sat on the porch as they had so many times before. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Nolan's hair was starting to gray at the temples, and Cara had laugh lines around her eyes. They were older now, worn by years of work and love and life. "Do you ever think about how we got here?" Nolan asked. "Sometimes," Cara said. "I do. I think about that day Gareth showed up, about how scared I was that I would lose you before I ever really had you." He took her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles. "I am glad I lied, so am I," he smiled. "We have built something good, have we not?" "We have. I love you, Cara. I love you too." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun dip below the horizon. And Cara thought about the future that stretched ahead of them. More years on this farm, watching their sons grow, making cheese and tending goats and living the life they had chosen. It was a simple life, a good life, and it was theirs. She leaned into Nolan, feeling the warmth of him, the steadiness that had never wavered. And she knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be, with him, always with him.